Hi everyone, welcome to this video. This video we're going to show you our emergency steering systems. So Te Tāiko has wheel steering, but if something with that fails, then we've got some backup plans so that we can steer the boat. Obviously being able to steer a yacht or losing steering of a vessel is really a big problem. So having good processes in place to make sure that you can intervene and have another way of steering is really important and something we've been thinking about a lot. So the two main things I'm going to go through today, one is emergency tiller, and the second thing is the emergency steering that comes with our Hydrovane. There's a third thing that we'll also have aboard very soon. We haven't quite got there yet, but we will later this week, and that's a drogue which we'll be able to use for emergency steering too, so I'll talk you through what we're going to do there. Okay, so thanks very much for joining and look forward to showing you the emergency steering. So the way that the wheel steering works, the main steering system on the boat, there's the binnacle here and there's a big wheel which is behind me. We just take this off when we're in port because it obstructs a bit. But basically as you turn the wheel, there's a chain which goes down through the binnacle and there's a gear on the bottom. There's another chain that's connecting through to two stainless steel cables with turnbuckles which connect to the quadrant. So the quadrant is bolted tightly onto the rudder stock. So as the wheel turns, the chains move, and via the cables to the turnbuckles which are attached to the quadrant, the rudder turns. Okay, so there's a few things that could go wrong in that sequence in terms of a chain breaking, a gear breaking or coming off, turnbuckles giving way. Any of those mechanical things are a potential issue. We've taken it all apart and serviced it, so we know it's all good, but it's about just not really knowing what might happen, I suppose. Another thing I just mentioned is we will have some Dyneema on board, which has a very strong low stretch fibre rope type, and we will have some of that, so if any of that, in theory, if any of that breaks, we can refashion a connection with Dyneema temporarily to try and get our system working again. So now I'll show you the emergency tiller. So we keep some essential tools in the gas locker here. So they're located really handy to the steering, and the tools are a big screwdriver Phillips head required to remove the cap on the emergency steering, and the emergency tiller handle for the Hydrovane, and a hardwood bung that I'll show you in a second. So all those things are readily accessible here in the gas locker. First of all, I'm going to remove the panel which covers the top of the rudder stock, or it's also the attachment point for the emergency tiller. Okay, so I've got the screws out. Now this is adhered down with some clear adhesive, so that's going to require a little bit of removing, so it's going to be interesting to see how hard this is to do. This is a cosmetic cover that covers the top of the rudder stock, and like one thing we've realised is we need to try and keep this watertight because there's holes and we don't want moisture getting down into the structure of the boat. So I did use some silicone sealant. It was a bit hard to get off then, but I just used a scraper and tapped it in with a mallet, and you could hear the silicone like releasing and letting go. So I think that's actually okay. It's good to figure that out. Previously we tried some butyl kind of mastic, sort of like a gel material that didn't set, but it just made a huge mess. So I think the silicone sealant's the way to go there. So this is the emergency tiller, and we've just written with a vivid to show, so we can remember which size spanners are needed to use the nuts and bolts on it, because you do actually have to take it apart to put it onto the top of the rudder stock. Also, one other time we've done this and realised that the rudder was the tiller was about 3 inches too long. It would hit the binnacle and the pods here, instrument pods, so we have actually trimmed it so that it can be mounted and we can use it without it impacting anything. So what I'll do now is I'll take this apart, just to show how it fits onto the top of the rudder stock and how that works. So this is a steel fitting that fits over the top of the rudder stock and then bolts down. So quite important, because this is what's obviously going to attach the tiller to the rudder stock. Coming up tight, so that's a 21mm socket on there, and then what happens next is the tiller, that around the right way. Okay, then we can introduce the tiller, acts as a pin, nut on there, obviously tighten it up. And then we're in a position where we can turn the rudder. So there's obviously a couple of issues with clearance. One is the wheel will have to come off, and also the compass, which is here on the binnacle, is in the way, but we can steer through. But in an emergency it might be that we actually just remove that. We've got digital compass on board, so we'd still have direction. So that's it really. That's how to use this emergency tiller. So as I move the tiller, you can see the spindle of the steering wheel moving. The boat has quite a large diameter aluminium rudder stock, and we've had that inspected several times and the condition's still good. There have been cases in the past where the aluminium rudder stocks have broken, so in the back of our mind, that's an issue. We've decided not to replace it at this point. Instead we're making contingencies with emergency steering. Now in relation to if the rudder stock did fail and it dropped out, the boat could potentially take on water really quickly. So we've had this hardwood bung turned, which will plug that hole, so we could just hammer that in and it would plug the hole where the rudder stock used to be. So this is another thing that always lives at the helm. So that's the emergency tiller on the existing rudder as a method of alternative steering, and it's most relevant when the wheel steering breaks but the rudder's still in place, so we can use it using this tiller. So the next thing, if the rudder was to be lost completely, then the emergency tiller wouldn't be any use anymore, because there'd be no rudder for it to connect to. So the next plan of contingency we have is the Hydrovane, and I'll show you that now. Bolted on the back of the boat is a Hydrovane, which is a wind vane self-steering system. One of the main reasons we chose to put a Hydrovane on the boat is because it has its own independent rudder, so there's some redundancy in terms of steering. So it's a very strong piece of equipment and very strongly attached with thick backing plates, so it's very strong piece of kit. One option for steering with a Hydrovane, other than just having the wind steer the boat, would be to put it into neutral, and then there's a tiller handle which you can use to actually, just like any other tiller, you could use it to steer the boat. One issue we've identified with that is that the tiller handle is really small and it's right back here, so in like big storm conditions that wouldn't really be appropriate to be having to lean right over the back of the boat. It wouldn't be much fun at all. So to do our best to resolve that situation, we had Garth from Fisheye Fabrication make us this tiller handle extension, so it fits into the existing tiller handle and brings the control right back to just by the backstay. There's a pin that goes through the tiller handle to stop it rotating. So it means I can stand further forward and still steer the boat. So I mean, it's not a super solution, very much you know, one of the last cash resorts for hand steering, but at least there is a second rudder and a second way of steering which is completely removed from any other aspect of steering the yacht. So we think this is really wise. And the third option for emergency steering, which we haven't quite got yet but we will have soon, is a drogue, which we can trail on a 50-metre polyester line off the back of the boat, and we can have two 20-metre lines coming to each quarter, one to each winch, so that we can shorten or lengthen those 20-metre lines and pull the drogue laterally across the boat to effect a steering action on the boat. So I've never tried that. It's something we will try at some stage once we've got the kit, but it'll just be good to have that drogue as a backup plan for emergency steering. Thanks very much for joining this Sunday snapshot looking at our emergency steering. I hope you found it interesting. It's certainly been a good exercise for us just to go through these processes and think about what the systems are. If you liked the video, remember to give it a like, give us a comment, it'd be great to hear from you. Share it with your friends and remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks to our Patreon and the viewers for your support, and join us next Sunday where the adventure continues on Great Barrier Island. Thanks very much for watching. See you.